Coming off of last week's episode, myself and I think many other people were expecting to hang out in the Breaking Bad timeline for at least a week. But as per the usual arrangement, the writers took us in a different direction. I think Nippy marks my official retirement for making predictions because I thought for sure Walter would appear in episode 10, but all we get is a reference to the man who forces Jimmy into his current predicament. Nippy is a change of pace, that is for sure, and I can see why some people might see it as an ill-timed change of pace, but I personally enjoyed it a lot. We'll have to see how it fits in with the final three episodes to make a final judgment on whether its placement is meant to set up certain things or if the episode was mostly house cleaning to clear up the Jeff storyline. Whatever the case may be, Nippy does give us a lot of much needed information on Gene Tankovic. We have now seen Jimmy McGill's story, and we see Saul's during Breaking Bad, which doesn't include much character development. But during Jimmy's final conversation with Walter, we see aspects of the Saul persona crack. When Saul becomes Gene, the question needs to be asked and answered: who is this guy? Does the new scenery put him on a path to change, or is he just Saul Goodman in new trappings? The answer appears to be the latter, and Nippy does a phenomenal job showing the audience the truth behind the Gene name tag. The episode begins by introducing Gene's target, Marion, Jeff's mother. She is not a pleasant woman. She's independent, she's rough around the edges, not the easiest person to befriend in short order, but that is Gene's task. And on a side note, I'm from Wisconsin, so when she tasted the cheese, that was a big moment for me. I was fully expecting rave reviews, and then she shot it down, so Gilligan damaged my state pride a little bit. Very disappointing. We get some Breaking Bad style POV shots, and then Gene enters the picture. He uses the Lost Dog posters to let Marion's guard down slightly. It's a classic Slip and Jimmy maneuver. But the dog's fictional story actually ties into the themes of the episode, so although the Nippy story seems somewhat inconsequential, it's there for a reason, and I'll touch on that towards the end. It's also worth mentioning the glitch in the opening credits. There was a clip on Twitter going around, which I'll leave in the comments. The opening credits have become progressively more staticky as the seasons have gone on to reflect Jimmy's transformation into Saul. And now that we're past that transformation, the credits can't even finish, so pretty cool stuff. It doesn't take long to see Saul reemerge. When Jeff enters his mother's home and finds Gene yucking it up with her, you can see the satisfaction on his face. He's enjoying this routine, he's missed it a lot. In the previous timeline, he is never content simply taking orders from people and living a comfortable life. That's why he can't take working at Davis and Maine. He needs his own projects, his own obsessions, and that is what this episode reminds us of. But there is something different to Gene in this little story. There's something more authoritative about him. When he tries to tempt Jeff into entering the game, we get this shot from way below Gene. This is not something we get in Breaking Bad. These types of shots that emphasize power are mostly reserved for Walter White. But Gene's confidence, now that he's no longer at the mercy of his powerful clients, is off the charts. And in perhaps the most important line of the episode, Gene tells Jeff, "Of course I can get you in the game, I'm Saul Goodman." I don't think he's using that identity to boost credibility, although it does help. I think Gene sincerely identifies with his Saul Goodman persona. Jimmy is truly dead with Kim out of the picture. He cannot be revived without her. If that declaration wasn't enough, Gene puts on the iconic pinky ring that was a symbol of his conman ways. It reminded me a lot of when Walter pulls out the hat before stepping out into the cold New Hampshire air. They're objects that tie their owner to a certain type of behavior. And this isn't a prediction officially, but maybe he'll retire the ring if Kim re-enters the picture. When the con officially kicks off, we get this sign that reads, "Start your play here." It lacks subtlety, but I always enjoy when the showrunners put little messages like that in the set design. And in regards to the timeline, based on the football game reference between Texas and Nebraska, we're in October of 2010, only about 5 weeks after the death of Walter White and the escape of Jesse Pinkman. The montage is a stroke of filmmaking genius. They turn mall security guards eating Cinnabons into an extremely entertaining sequence, which should be impossible, but they pulled it off. And I love the imagery of Gene preparing Cinnabons as he prepares the con. Jimmy's greatest asset is adaptability. He uses every tool at his disposal to get the job done. He no longer has a pile of cash and fixers like Mike, but his ingenuity makes up for it. As Gene walks through the department store, he carries around The Moon's a Balloon, a famous biography written by David Niven. I haven't read it, so I don't know the full extent of the thematic connections, but Niven did lose his first wife in a freak accident when she was only 28, so I suspect that lost love has something to do with its inclusion. The Walter White reference was pretty cool, and I think his story is relevant to the lesson Gene gives Jeff. He tells him pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered. meaning be content with what you get. That's a lesson Walter could not take to heart for almost the entire series, and it's also the one that gets Jack and his gang killed. As Todd tells his uncle, no matter how much you have, how can you turn your back on more? It's an important idea in the Gilligan world. Jeff is persuaded by Gene, no surprise there, and the con begins as planned. As Gene says at one point to the department store manager, "Don't worry about the 4-hour drive, I'll crank the tunes, it'll just be like old times." That's what it is for him, an exercise in nostalgia, a reflection of what he once was. This particular shot is in a mirror for a reason. But there is no Bonnie to his Clyde. So when Jeff slips on the polished floor Ted Beneke style, he's forced to improvise the same way he did in Fun and Games. He makes a brutal observation about his own life, how he's become just a shadow, but the observation is used for mere trickery. Steve Green of IndieWire describes it really well in his review of the episode. The sentiment is true, though the emotions are false. I think that's exactly right. But when Gene steps out of the security HQ, the true sentiments have a serious effect. The pain is still there, it's just buried below the Saul Goodman persona he embraced to help him forget about Kim and Chuck. And I hope we see more of that pain brought to the surface in the final 3 episodes. After the con ends in success, Gene gets his very own say my name moment, which I did not expect. This goes back to that new authoritative part of Gene I mentioned earlier. It could be born from observing Walter operate and feeling free from his chains, but it could also be that Saul was like this in Breaking Bad. We just didn't see the aggression because he was working with drug dealers and killers. Now getting back to the title of the episode, Nippy. I think the dog is representative of the Saul Goodman persona. The dog is lost, but when Marion asks what happened to it at the end, Gene tells her, it just happened to be a couple blocks away the entire time, and he's in great shape. So in short, Nippy is a parable of rediscovery. It is the ending of the episode that leaves the door open for change. Gene walks around the department store carrying a Royals bag, a nod to the shirt Kim is wearing when she breaks bad, takes a look at a Saul Goodman-esque shirt and tie, and decides to pass on it. I think in that moment, he realizes that that life only offered him so much. What he really desires is someone to show that shirt and tie to. He would seek Kim's counsel on almost everything, and with her gone, the creation process has lost its flavor. It's gone black and white. So he can enjoy the game in the moment, but when the stadium lights turn off, there's nothing left for him. And I think it's likely that Kim has had similar trouble in her life without Jimmy. There are still so many questions to have answered this season. The biggest one is where the hell is Kim, but putting that aside, I have no clue how Jesse and Walter are going to fit into this story. Next week appears to be all Gene as well, so unless there's some sort of flashback, I'm not sure. It would seem strange to fully jump back to the Breaking Bad timeline at this point. This week seemed like the perfect time to do that, but we'll just have to wait and see, I guess. If you had any thoughts on the episode, feel free to leave them below. It was a major change up, but I still enjoyed it quite a bit. And if you want to watch videos like this for the final 3 episodes, make sure to subscribe on your way out. Thank you so much for stopping by. Have a fantastic rest of your day. I will talk to you soon.